Welcome to Life's Issues with LLoyd Rosen, where the discussion will be about issues that affect people on a daily basis. Life's Issues is brought to you by the Tough Talk Radio Network. Now here's your host, LLoyd Rosen.
Good afternoon and welcome to another Friday edition of Life's Issues with LLoyd Rosen. We're here to take on another subject that involves you and your life, and if you'd like to join us and partake in the show, you can dial 347-989-1363 and press 1. You'll be put in the queue for your question to be asked to our guest. If you are a social butterfly, you can go to Facebook and go to Tough Talk Radio Network or my personal page, which is LLoyd S. Rosen. You can email me a question after the show, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you at bowler900@sbcglobal.net. Anybody who would like to be a guest on our show and come on and promote your business or your book, you can go to Life's Issues with LLoydRosen.com. You can press on the Register to be a Guest tab, and you can register. We'll get back to you and set you up for a time and date that you can come on and speak with us. You can also contact us from that website as well as listen to the show live. You can also go to www.toughtalkradionetwork.com to learn all about the shows that we have on the network, and we have somewhere around 12 or 13 now, so we're definitely growing. You can download the show on iTunes. You can listen to it at your convenience whenever you want. You don't have to be subject to the telephone or the computer whenever you want. Now, today's show is going to be, I have one guest on today, and she is got a book that is quite interesting, I found. It talks about something that involves everybody because, as everybody knows, if you're born, you're going to die. And being the kind of person that I am that dealt with depression and suicide for so many years, I always thought about dying, and I was always a little bit apprehensive about dying, not necessarily the fact that I was going to die, but the fact that I didn't know how I was going to die, what it was going to feel like, and all of those sorts of things. So I've got so many things to ask my guest. I'm not going to waste any more time with my monologue. I'd like to bring in my guest. She is the author of a book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. She spent 15 years on a journey of discovery for proof of life after death. Through the disciplines of science and medicine, she uncovered the clear, undeniable truth that we don't die. Without further ado, I'd like to bring in my guest, Sandra Champlain. How are you, Sandra?
Hello, LLoyd. I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I know when I started the show and I had my list of guests that were coming on and I saw what your topic was, I definitely was excited to talk to you about it. I did watch your interview on NBC television out in Connecticut there, so I learned a little bit about you. So let's delve right into now.
Sure.
I did read a portion of your book, and I found out why you were a skeptic. But why do you call yourself a skeptic?
I call myself a skeptic because I have my beliefs that I learned, whether it was growing up or things that I learned in school, and didn't know it at the time, but I really took the things my parents told me as truth. This is the way it is. This is how the world works. My dad was an airline pilot, very analytical in nature. We grew up Catholic, so we had faith in God, but anything that had to deal with things like astrology and mediums and psychics and things like that, there was no proof to it, didn't exist. I not only adopted those beliefs, and automatically, I didn't even know I did it, but to me, that was just all the truth, everything that my parents had said. And so if anybody were talking about the afterlife or people that participated in some of these New Age activities, having their cards done and things, I was not only a skeptic, I was a cynic, I was outspoken, and I thought anybody who was into that kind of thing was nuts. So the fact that I went on this journey and I uncovered the information, I actually think lends a little bit more credibility because there are so many of us skeptics out there.
And it was proven to you that it was real, so you ended being a skeptic, I would think.
Say that again?
You ended being a skeptic because it was all proven to you to be real and true.
Well, it's funny because I think by nature I'm a skeptic. I've got a good friend of mine who loves watching that Sasquatch show, and we got another friend who's into the UFOs, and what comes automatically on my radar screen is like, oh, these guys are nuts. There's no proof to that. So I think, and I actually have to remind myself to have an open mind in things, that there are things in this universe that I don't know about. So instead of immediately going to how ridiculous, it's just take a deep breath, understand that what I'm sharing still kind of lands the wrong way for some people, and just have more of an open mind. But I think I am autopilot skeptic about things, but not this subject.
I tend to be a skeptic in some ways, but as I was telling you off the air, I had a fine visit some 6 years ago with John Edward, and he connected with my father and made it so real for me that I was able to come home to Texas, where I was living at the time, and found a psychic medium who taught me how to relax my body and to meditate and connect with the other side. So I, for one, know that it's real, so there's no convincing.
I love that. And I've got a good John Edward story for you. I know this is
Go right
jumping
ahead.
ahead in the interview, but even though I've got the book and it hit #1 on Amazon in the grief category and #4 top motivational book on Amazon, which is humongous, and it's almost a year old, I still go to the place, I think it's autopilot for our minds to question, whether I'm on the right track or not. And I met this woman at a conference in October, and she said to me, she and her mom always believed in psychics and mediums, and they had always wanted to see John Edwards, and they never got the chance to, but they watched him on TV all the time. Well, they had this secret pact. If one of the two of them were to die, somehow they'd go through John Edwards and they'd get a message to the other one. So they were just said it playfully because nobody expected the other to get ill. Well, certainly it ends up happening as the mother developed cancer, and 3 months later she passes away. So John Edwards comes to town, and the daughter says, well, I'm going to see him. And the father never believed in any of it, but they were both newly grieving, and he says, I'll go with you. So, John Edwards filled the auditorium with 600, 700, 800 people. And as soon as the show started, he moved his way through the audience and actually said, there's a very loud mother who's trying to get to you. Went right up to the daughter with her father right there and gave some really specific things that only the daughter could know. So the daughter was convinced that the mother's there. So then the John Edwards turns to the father and says, I know you don't believe, but your wife wants you to know that she was with you by the side of the river, and she saw little Bo Peep with the staff. Now, the father breaks down in tears, and so the girl's telling me this story at the conference, and she said that after the mom had died, he had gone for a long walk by the river. I forgot what city they lived in, but he sat on a park bench, and a man dressed in drag, who was dressed as little Bo Peep with the staff, ended up sitting down with him and hit on him. So it's funny, and this woman had seen it from beyond. And the father knew in that moment that there's no other people around, that there's no question his wife was there. And so the next month was their anniversary, and Lloyd, he went out to dinner, and he got a table for 2, and the other seat looked empty, but he believed she was there. She loved going to the opera. He bought 2 seats to the opera. The seat next to him appeared to be empty, but he knew she was there. And to have this belief in life after death and that the loved ones are still around is so powerful in how we live life now. And I think that really is the true message of why I'm sharing so greatly my message that we don't die.
Let me just interject my story to the end of that story, because You're absolutely right, 100%, because after I left John Edward, I had a completely new, unfound relationship with my father. And I know now when my father is around me. I know when he's not around me. Give you a quick story. I was driving in my car. I have a CD player in it like everybody else does, and I was wanting to put a CD in. And I put in Billy Joel, and I was listening to him for a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden, Frank Sinatra came to mind. I took the CD for Frank Sinatra, threw it in the CD player, and listened to the complete CD. Why? Because my father's favorite singer was Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
So I know when he's around, I know what he's doing for me, and I know how he's helping me in life. So for those people out there that are listening to us, it's real. Sandra's book is something that everybody should at least look into, if not get it and read it. But let me ask you this. What made you start to research life after death? For me, it was my grandfather passing away when I was 14 years old, and I was a pallbearer. And when I had my hands underneath the coffin, because in the Jewish religion, we rolled the coffin to the gravesite, and we just help it. I felt his back, and I saw his body. The box wasn't even there. So what made you start to research life after death?
Wow, that's incredible. For me, my grandfather died when I was 14 as well, and my dad got diagnosed with cancer, given just a few months to live, although he ended up living 30 years past that. And I'd worked in nursing homes that I was cooking at a very young age. I love to cook, and I'd first volunteer at nursing homes, and I was hired actually as one of the cooks long before graduating from high school. But I would go sit with the residents after work in the afternoon and hold their hand and hear stories, and next day I'd go into work and they'd be gone. And I think that at the time I went through a lot of sadness, but then I grew up, went off to college, got busy in my own life, and then there was a point, and it was in 1996, that this fear kind of took over. And I don't know if it just happened on one day or it just slowly started building, but I was going through a time where I had some failures in my life, some broken hearts, and then there's times that the same stuff keeps happening over and over in life. And looking up at the stars one day, it's like, who am I? What is my life for? What's the purpose to all this? And it just landed on my chest really heavy, Lloyd, that I had this fear of dying. I didn't know what my life was for. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what happens when it's all over. Does Sandra still exist? Is this it? And I like to say that my faith could answer the question and tell me there's nothing to fear, but it didn't. It just was this incredible fear that I couldn't live life unless I knew what happened after death. Strange as that may sound, it was very real, and anybody who's felt fear in some way or another knows that fear can be crippling. So I had to start looking. I just figured there's got to be somebody somewhere that knows something about this, not just the answer.
Right. So what evidence did you find about death?
Yeah, the first thing I did was I searched religion. That's where I knew to go. And it had me studying the top 10 religions in the world. And very similar beliefs about life after death, which was comforting. And then, learned a little bit about Buddhism with reincarnation. And I thought, that makes sense. Reincarnation's like recycling. Why would a child only get a few months to live? Let them come back. I thought, well, that's good, but still didn't rest the fears. And I had an opportunity to see a psychic medium do a stage show, and her name is Doreen Virtue, very famous. And there's several different things that happened along the journey, but basically I had seen and witnessed her being so specific with people, so specific, that I knew in my gut that there had to be something to this. My skeptic mind was saying, can't be true, but how could she know such specifics about people? And very secretly, I did some research on her on the internet, and she offered a 3-day course in mediumship. And at the end of 3 days, you will be somebody who can accurately tell the deceased people around others. So the Sandra who was afraid of dying had to book the ticket to go to California and take this course. The Sandra that was skeptical is like, you can't tell anybody about this because chances are it's not going to be real. You're going to just be disappointed. We all have that cynical voice in our head. I think we all do. And so I'd love to tell you what happened when I showed up at the course. Doreen, first of all, I was greeted by probably about 20 people that were in the course with us. And Doreen had said, if you were brought here, it's for a reason. And of course, my skeptical mind is saying, yeah, that's what you're telling everybody. But she says, I want to show you how medium readings are done. She says, we're not going to do it right now. I want you to rest your mind. But when the time comes, this is what we're going to be doing. So she says, we're going to just play make-believe. She says, everybody grab a partner. So I grabbed this woman's hands, and she says, sit down, knee to knee, hold hands. Okay. She says, somebody go first. One be A, one be B. I'm like, I'll go first. And she says, this is just going to use your imagination. I want you to close your eyes and connect with your partner heart to heart. Imagine this invisible energy connecting you, and surround yourself with like a golden light, and that it's a very, very safe space.
Okay.
And then she says, what'd you say?
Go ahead and finish that
okay.
thought. Because what I want to do is I want to stop you before you give the explanation of what you saw.
Okay.
Because it's time for a break, and I just wanted you to give my audience information as to where they can get your book and find out about you. And then I was going to take a break and come back and let you pick up what you saw.
Well, we can do all that. So I can remind your audience that my name is Sandra Champlain. The book is We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And the best website to find me and get a whole bunch of information about life after death is at my website, WeDon'tDie.com.
Sounds good. We're going to be right back with Sandra, who's here for the full hour, right after these messages. Welcome back to Life's Issues. We're here today with the author of a book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. The author's name is Sandra Champlain, and she was just explaining to me before the break about going to a course in California to learn how to pick up on people around other people. So, Sandra, go ahead and pick up where you were.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we were doing a make-believe medium session, and so our instructions were just to use the power of our imagination and literally invent a person, a deceased person, behind our partner. And this was just make-believe, just to give us the basics of how we do a medium reading. So because I know in my heart that I'm no medium, but I'm a chef by trade. I can use my imagination. I'm pretty good at that. I had no problem doing the exercise. So literally we had to invent a person standing behind our partner. If we could think of a name, great. What they did for a living, great. Maybe where they lived, what they died of, and there's usually some profound message that comes at the end. So I could make all that up, no problem. So I saw in my mind's eye a man standing behind my partner. I gave him the name Jan, and I'm speaking this out loud. I'm saying, I believe your grandfather's with you. He's on your mom's side. His name is Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He died of lung cancer. He had blonde hair, blue eyes. He had really red windburned skin, big gap between his front teeth. Never told your mom that he loved her. And so he wants you to tell your mom that, the grandfather says, I love you. And I'm talking this all really matter-of-factly, Lloyd, because, it's just my turn to go. And so I open my eyes and tell my partner, okay, it's your turn. So I look at my partner, and there's just these streams of tears coming down her cheeks. And so, I instinctively knew something was up. And she says, Sandra, My grandfather's name was Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He died of lung cancer. Blonde hair, blue eyes, gap between his teeth. Never told my mom that he loved her. And in that moment, as I'm sure when you experienced John Edwards for the first time, it was suddenly this whole world that can't be possible is possible. And if mediumship is real, I mean, I really had it that if it was real, it would only be for special people. Certainly not me, who didn't believe in it. But it cracked the door open that there is something to this. Certainly there can be people out in the world that are frauds and con artists, but there's also reality to it. And so I spent the weekend at this seminar only being right maybe 30 to 40% of the times, because to get a medium hit, and this is my feeling, I don't know how yours is, but to me it occurs very much like my imagination. So to differentiate what's my imagination and what's not, I couldn't really clearly do. But I was right and really descript, like the first woman, so many times that I know that it's much more than a coincidence.
Yeah, you know as well as I do, there are no coincidences.
No.
And, I'm a firm believer in the fact that when a thought comes into your mind, the thought comes from the other side. You have the power to choose whether to listen to that decision or not, but that's all you have. The idea comes from the other side, and that's why the people who listen to those decisions, and they're good decisions, do so well in life, and the ones who listen to the bad decisions don't do well in life or change their decisions, because the bad decisions more or less probably don't come from the other side. They come from the devil or something. But
yeah, and it depends how you feel too. Like I've never gone on to become an expert medium. I mean, my intent was to learn as much other things as I could too, because now remember, I didn't believe in any of this, so I was petrified to tell anybody in my life that I took a course in mediumship, because they'd say, well, who do you see around me? And if I got it wrong, Lloyd, then they'd laugh at me, they'd ridicule me, kind of like I would have done to someone else. So I wanted to gather as much information as I could. So I didn't go on to really practice mediumship. It was just like a step along the way. But I do know that I had come home, and it was, whatever year it was Christmas time, and I lived with my aunt, and I very clearly could see her deceased ex-husband and my grandmother watching us decorate our Christmas tree. And I noticed that, now I didn't know the guy too well, but I saw like a red flannel shirt on him, and I saw him sneak up behind my aunt's back and kiss her on the cheek and kind of hug her from behind. And I saw my grandmother sitting there, and I could tell exactly what she was wearing. And it's interesting because when I try to imagine a person, like I really have to invent what would they be wearing. But I've noticed when I have these psychic hits that I see somebody with us, I can actually tell, like Grandma used to wear ball caps, so I could usually tell what kind of ball cap she had and just look from head to toe exactly what she was wearing. I wasn't inventing it. And so my Uncle Chuck, I had said to Donna, my aunt, told her about my uncle, and she says she had given him that shirt for Christmas, and that's what he used to always do, is he used to sneak up behind her, wrap his arms around her, and kiss her cheek. And so it was pretty cool.
Okay, so you take this class, you go to California, spend all this money, and so why did you decide to write the book after all of this?
I didn't decide to write the book till years and years later. I had all my evidence between remote viewing, electronic voice phenomena, digging real deep into reincarnation, life, or near-death experiences. There's people that have had near-death experiences that are blind, that could only see when they were flatlined on an operating table. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. And I had all that gathered that rested my fears. That was back in 2005, and I thought someday I'll write a book. Someday I'll do something, because I know there's a lot of pain out there, and if people believed in life after death, there'd be a lot less grieving. But pushed it off on someday. Really thought, well, who am I to write a book? I'm not smart enough to do that. Other people do that. And I got busy in life. And so my dad got diagnosed with cancer in 2010, and he ended up dying 5 months later. And it was the most painful experience of my life watching my dad die. I relocated to Florida to live with him and help him along the way. And it didn't even matter what I believed in. It was tremendously painful to watch him suffer and die. And during that time, my relationship started suffering with my siblings, arguments about Dad's care before he passed and then about his arrangements after he passed. And a loving family turned into these monsters, and I got labeled as the greedy sister, and it all went wrong. And finding myself in a lower than low place, it was just, and now this could have been one of those psychic moments, I don't know, but something told me that this is all part of grief and that I need to research the world of grief. And in a nutshell, Lloyd, I found, the basic stages of grief that we all hear about, but I wanted to know what would turn a loving family into monsters, and to the anger and to the arguments, and I found out how our brain chemistry works while we're grieving, and that we lose part of our healthy neurotransmitters that are responsible for memory and communication and perception, and what the reason is for all the depression and the anger and all this. And I found some really great things that I thought, I feel confident in sharing these things because they helped me alleviate the pain, gave me some understanding. And so I created a free audio called How to Survive Grief and decided to just give it away. I bought the domain name survivegrief.com, which still exists, and people can either go download the audio or just press play. And I made some posts on Facebook about it. And I didn't have a list of thousands of Facebook friends. I only had a few hundred. But something crazy happened. In just a few months of Dad dying and this audio being released, over 3,000 people had downloaded it. And so people were telling two friends, and they were telling two friends. Well, then emails started coming in about how my words helped ease people's pain, how they gave people understanding. I didn't get into life after death in it. At the end, I posed the question, but it was more about really dealing with grief. And the final thing that made me say, I need to get to as many people as possible with this information is, Lloyd, people started reporting that my words made them choose not to commit suicide.
Wow,
that they
that's heavy.
It's very heavy. I even had somebody look me in the eye and tell me that. And basically, I think, having been someone who's dealt with severe grief, that if you're typically a happy-go-lucky person and all is well in your life and you lose someone or something that you love, because if we lose our health or lose financial status, or there's a death in the family or death of someone close, or you go through a divorce, grief kicks in, and if you find yourself in one of these lower than low places, it is so depressing and so awful. And I can't imagine for you and for anybody listening when you seriously consider suicide, but I mean, it must be like there's no other option. And so for this one man in particular to look me in the eye, and he never knew that sort of pain. And he said, listening to your audio, Sandra, it was like you were talking to me. He says, there were three things that you said that it was like you were in my head, like you knew exactly how I was thinking and what I was feeling. And at that point, he said, I realized that this must be grief. And so he took my steps to help through the grieving process, and it saved his life. And so to get enough of those emails in, I'm not I feel very passionate about spreading the word about what grief is and what it isn't and helping people through. But ultimately, I'm not the grief lady. I'm not like that's my message. And when I started thinking about how do I get to the most amount of people the fastest, it hit me. Mankind's biggest fear is dying. We don't talk about it a lot. But right now, the top book on the New York Times bestseller list is Proof of Heaven. And it's been for something like 87 weeks because people want to know. We might not be talking about it, but people want to know. So I thought, Lloyd, if I could have the backbone to speak up and tell people my journey and really deliver on the goods about life after death, and then put one chapter in about grief, because we're all going to have to deal with it some point or another. And then who I really am for the planet is for people to have a powerful, great life while they're here, have some fun. You're going to fail. You're going to succeed. We're going to have heartaches, but we're going to have love and how to just play full out and have the best life possible while we're here. And so the genesis of this book kind of came up, and then, like you say, there are no coincidences, is don't I happen to meet a publisher, and don't I happen to have the backbone to courageously tell him what I'd like to write, really thinking this man's going to think I'm a lunatic. And
Right.
And he said, if you can write that, we'll publish you. And of course, I had to write some words and put it in front of him. And I'd never written before in my life, never. But I just pictured a person in front of me just to tell the story. And then that's all it is you listening to my story.
Right.
And look what's happened to it. There's now
Exactly.
10,000 people that have heard the words and tons of healing going on.
Exactly, and that's what you're here for. Let's take another break, and we'll come back and pick up this conversation right after these words. Welcome back to Life's Issues with Lloyd Rosen. We're here today with the author of a book called We Don't Die, The Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death, Sandra Champlain. And we were discussing grief and how it can hurt immensely, not just physically, but also mentally. And I wanted to move on from grief for a second and ask Sandra, in your book you talk about remote viewing. What exactly do you mean by that?
Oh, I love talking about this. Remote viewing is an ESP technique. It is something where, you brought this up before when you're talking about psychic abilities. When you can quiet your mind, I think really that is the place that we can go for so many things. Not just meditating and finding peace, but when we tap into whether it's our psychic abilities or we can see our deceased loved ones, or even some of the greatest inventors of the planet would see these unbelievable ideas, or musicians or artists would create their songs or paintings, and they could see something in their mind's eye when their mind is quiet. Well, what remote viewing is, it's another thing where we quiet our mind and we have an intention. And kind of like I gave the story of making believe I was a medium and actually producing results, where if you could do this with a friend who's long distance and might have a unique object on, say, their kitchen table. Or if you're alone, you could have a magazine in front of you that you've never opened before. And remote viewing is kind of playing the game. If you did have psychic abilities, and if you could see the pictures inside the magazine, or you could see elements of whatever the object is on your friend's table, what would it be? What would you see? And so it takes about 15 minutes to quiet the mind and to have this intention, and then you have a notebook in front of you, and just write down just any images that come to your mind, no matter how crazy they may seem. Just write them down on the piece of paper. And then you kind of ask, if it is an object on somebody's kitchen table, does it have any weight to it? Does it have any shapes to it? Is there color? Is there smell? Are there any moving parts? What can you do with this object? And our imagination will definitely throw in like some bizarre things, but then there's this psychic sense of us that can actually tell what some of the dimensions are and attributes to that object. And so basically why I like to teach people this, Lloyd, is because the whole world of psychic abilities and life after death, and even reading it in We Don't Die, it can all make sense, but then, a little skeptical nature is still telling me, or anybody, like, well, it all sounds good, but I still don't believe it. Well, you have an experience of remote viewing, and it is ESP. So you might be having this magazine in front of you, and you wrote down 30 different images that you just saw in your imagination. Well, then you start opening the magazine, and 2/3 or 3/4 of those images are actually in the magazine. Or your friend pulls out their iPhone or takes a picture of whatever the object is on their kitchen table, and you say, I just saw that in my mind. It is so mind-blowing that suddenly it starts bringing forth this feeling, if I just could do that, I can't possibly just be this body and this mind. There has to be something more to me. And every single person can remote view. Every person I've taught it to can. I've done it on the internet with people I've never met through text messaging. I mean, it is all possible. Some of us see things more clearly and might be able to tell what the object is. Others of us may be just able to see the shape, the color, maybe what it's used for. But it brings this whole world of psychic nature into reality and gives a lot of comfort that we are so much more than we think we are.
Yeah, I believe that we are so much more than we think we are, because I just truly cannot believe, in my own personal viewpoint, that life here in the physical world is all there is, and after you die, at whatever age you die, that you're done, you're over with, you're finished. And so, and this is a good question I have for you, because it's something that I've always wondered about. So, if I believe, like you do, that we just physically die, but we don't, our spirit doesn't die, our soul doesn't die, what purpose do you think we have for life? What does it serve?
It's a great question. The best way I can answer it is just in my own beliefs. And I have a huge sense of humor. Huge. And I think, too, it's a heavy subject we're talking about, so if we can make it light, even better. So I just want you and your listeners to imagine, and again, this is just me playing make-believe. Take what fits, throw away the rest. But there's this place. You can call it heaven, you can call it the hereafter. It's a place we're all supposed to go after we die. It's a place we came from before we came here. And this heaven, of course, we know of heaven from religion, like it's all good all of the time. It's all the best of everything all the time. The only problem with this, Lloyd, is that could you imagine having to eat your favorite food for the rest of your life? Like, that's it.
That's rough.
Yeah, and your favorite song on the radio, you know what that's like when you hear a song and you love it and then you play it over and over and over and over? Well, it's not special anymore, and it can actually get quite annoying. So playfully, I say, what if we get to come here to this place that's certainly not boring, and to have good and really be able to experience something as good, we also need to have bad. To know what light is, we need to have darkness. To know what pleasure is, we need to have sorrow. And so to come to earth, our soul gets to go to this place. Now we forget who we really are, because, if we really remembered who we were all the time, then we would be in this land of all good again, and it would defeat the purpose. But to come to this planet Earth, one is we have 5 senses. We have a body, which I believe in heaven or the hereafter. We don't. I think we might have an ethereal body. We might think we have a body, but I think it's more like a dreamlike state where we can visualize, we can see, we can imagine. I mean, we know that if we were to imagine our favorite song on the radio, we can kind of hear it, but it's so much more different to hear it. Or we could imagine what a hot fudge sundae tastes like, or we could actually eat the hot fudge sundae and, taste it. So here on Earth, we have the 5 senses. We get to experience. We get to It's not just all good all the time. We have these emotions, and through our emotions and through our adventures of life, we actually learn. And I think our soul comes here to learn, to love, to experience, to forgive, to grow. And I think I personally have now adopted the belief as far as reincarnation, not so much for any other reason except for it's extremely empowering to want to learn as much as I can here while I'm here, and then at the end know that I can come back and learn more and that I'll be back with my family and things like that. But I think Earth is the place. It's like school, and it's here. We're here to learn, here to grow, here to experience, and this place that we go after. I mean, it all seems like, oh, this is great, but show me some proof. When a log burns, we know it turns to ash, but we also know it turns to heat, and that heat is invisible, but it exists. When a puddle evaporates, now that puddle's gone from the ground, but the water exists in vapor, just another form. There is a magical world that is around us right now that is invisible. There's not a single one of us that can see the wireless internet signals or radio waves that connect us or GPS signals, and they're very much real. It's energy. And we are, in a scientific form, if we were broken down to our basic parts, we are vibrating energy. And science has proven that energy can exist on top of each other at the same time. Like, I don't know where you are, but inside my house I have the wireless internet right now around me, and I'm existing. And so our loved ones that we can access just by nature of quieting our mind, I believe that heaven, or whatever you want to call it, is vibrating just at a parallel space right where we are right now, in that invisible place where the internet is and all that. Einstein said we can look at the world like nothing is a miracle or everything's a miracle. And when we start getting out of our own heads and witnessing like how it's possible that you and I are talking right now and so many people are listening, that is a miracle.
Yeah. I'm sitting here and I'm just kind of, now, here's my next question for you. And it's pretty much a very simple question. If I, as a person, and I'm talking about the masses, if they believe in how a GPS works or how Wi-Fi works or how any other energy works that we can't see, if they truly believe that that works because they're getting on their computer and they're getting from destination A to destination B in their car with the GPS, why is it so hard for us as human beings to believe that there is life after death? I talk to people all the time about it, and they go, no, man, when you die, you die. That's it. You're done. You're finished. You're over with. Why is it so hard for people not to believe that?
Yeah, I think this is just speculation, but I truly don't believe the purpose of being a human is to believe who we really are. I don't, because I think if we did, it would kind of defeat the purpose. And we have this voice that we all have in our own head, and it's usually judging and assessing us, whether, gosh, it wants us to push the snooze button in the morning, or we look in the mirror and call ourselves unattractive or unlovable, or some of us stupid, like, who am I to write a book? Like, we have this little voice inside of our head, and it does this thing that it could take something really great that's happened to you and turn it into, it's no big deal. It's no big deal anymore. When you first had your radio show, Lloyd, wasn't it just like the coolest thing? Like, so cool. And and people like, oh gosh, you got a show, that's so awesome. And even me, when I first got the books in the mail a year ago, it's like I cried, like, oh, my name is on a book, oh my gosh. And even some people with their spouse, when they get married, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to love you forever. You are just the greatest thing. And then time goes on, and it's like, not so special anymore. we forget how special our spouses are. I look at my book, and it's like, well, it's almost as if somebody else wrote it. Or, with your show, do you wake up every day with like, oh, I got another show? Or it's like, well, yeah, I'm going to make a difference, but it's not special anymore. So us as humans, we get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, and now even having our internet and our cell phone technology, we're so paying attention to like beep beep, text message or Facebook message, that to see a sunrise or see something beautiful right in front of our eyes, it's just not special anymore.
Right.
So we're not paying attention.
And you're absolutely right, because things become normality, and that's unfortunate in life.
Yeah, and did you know that for hundreds and hundreds of years, people thought the Earth was flat? And even 300 years after Magellan circumnavigated the globe with his ship, people still said it's flat. They refused to believe it.
It isn't flat?
Huh?
It isn't flat?
No.
No, anyway.
Well,
I'm just giving you bad time.
No, but I mean the same thing with the radio in our car. If you told somebody 150 years ago that there would be a box in an automobile, first of all, only horses move people from point A to point B. Right. And then there'd be a box inside of it, and then voices are going to come out. They're going to think, oh, it's the devil's work. It's just not possible.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Throughout the course of time, conversations changes, and it takes people like you and me to get the words out there. And ultimately, the whole purpose about what you're doing, what I'm doing, what we're doing together is so people have a better quality of life now. That's what we're up to. And it takes time, and it takes enough of us playing the game.
Let me have you give your information one more time, and then we'll take our last commercial break, and then we'll come back.
Sure. My name is Sandra Champlain, and my book is We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And you can visit me at wedon'tdie.com. And there's actually, for those visual people out there, I had an Emmy Award-winning videographer create a DVD, a movie that you can watch online about me and how my words and my journey actually turned him from a skeptic to much more than a believer.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after these words.
Are you concerned about your job, your career, or your future? When you become CARE certified in the workplace, these concerns will be eliminated while your career soars in the process. Up until now, CARE certification was only available through company-sponsored seminars, but now you can become CARE certified in the workplace on your own time. Order Module 1 today and begin the transformation. There's unlimited opportunity in the workplace today, provided you have the right strategy. Becoming CARE certified is the right strategy. For more information and to order, go to charliespeaking.com.
Join Dr. Alan Simberg and his guests every Tuesday from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on Life-Changing Insights. Life-Changing Insights is a show dedicated to providing its listeners with self-improvement information that has a positive effect on an individual's mental, physical, and spiritual being, as well as unresolved relationship issues. For more information or to be a guest on Life-Changing Insights, go to Life-Changing Insights with dralansimberg.com. Life-Changing Insights every Tuesday from 3 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on the Tough Talk Radio Network.
Life's Issues with Lloyd Rosen, a show that delves into the hot topics of life. Lloyd takes life's issues head-on with hard-hitting interviews with professionals such as doctors and teachers, as well as those that have experienced life's alerting issues, whether professional, emotional, or physical. Lloyd wants to help those that are searching for answers to living a successful life. Life's Issues airs every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, right here on the Tough Talk Radio Network. Find out more at lifesissueswithlloydrosen.com.
Welcome back to Life's Issues. We're here today with Sandra Champlain, the author of the book We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And I know the show is starting to wind down here, Sandra, so I need to ask you a kind of personal question because it's been eating at me for the last 2 years as I've been dating this young lady. And she, in the last 2 years, she's lost 2 aunts, and she just can't understand life and death and the fact that when you're born, you're going to die. And she said to me on a number of occasions, she goes, I don't know what I'm going to do when my father dies. He's my rock. He's my everything. And I understand that. I lost my dad in 1997, so I understand that. But how can I help her to understand that when you are born, you're going to die, it's inevitable?
That's a fine question, my friend. The thing is, I think the more important thing to let her know is that this goes back to us all having this voice inside of our head, and some people call it the inner critic. I call it the voice. And our habits for thinking can overtake our lives. So there are people that are literally stuck in grief for 30 years and can't go on living when they lose a loved one. Our brains, if we feel guilty over something that happened, our brains, the more times we think guilty thoughts or feel guilty, the more times our brain will just automatically put that in front of us. Your lady friend there, the more times she worries or thinks about, I can't live without my dad, I can't handle it when it happens, the more time she will end up automatically thinking it. So it's to be aware that, these neural pathways for thinking get created. I am very, very passionate about sharing my words because, as you know, in We Don't Die, it's not just the life after death journey and a chapter on grief, but it's who are we as human beings, how to have power in our lives. And one thing I want to teach people to do is to have power over that voice. When she can understand that, okay, Dad's going to go and she's going to go, and it is going to be horrendously painful. But the truth is, everything that we have each been through as a human being, as rough as it's been, we have been able to get through it. So she will survive it, and it will be hard. But to look at the relationship she's got with her dad now and use that to its fullest, as opposed to it taking up the space in her mind right now and worrying about it. When you worry about things, it's like they always say, what you resist persists. And they also say, I don't know what the saying is exactly, but it's like what we focus our attention on is what we see in our life. If I gave you and her an all expense paid trip to Hawaii, well, you're going to catch the eye of every time you see somebody in a Hawaiian shirt go by. It'll remind you, oh, I'm going to Hawaii, and it's a great thing. And so if she's looking for gloom and doom, you're going to find it. We all know negative people, and oh, geez, it's tough. To actually create positive words and reprogram our thoughts for the positive is what needs to happen. I don't know if she's listening to the show or not, but I had one lady who left a copy of We Don't Die at her mother's house, and her mother's like, I don't want that here, I don't believe in any of that, and her husband had passed away. Well, she ended up reading it just because it was there, and she just had this curiosity. Well, she was able to realize that she spent 5 months of her life in her house after the husband died, refused to leave, stuck in grief. And my book and the thoughts, because my book is not just here's my journey. It's here's my journey. Well, how about you and your life? How does this fit? How about this? And so the lady was able to take that part, which I was talking about, how our brain works and our thoughts work, and she literally was able to change her thinking. And now she's out of the house. She's taking country line dancing classes. She's living her life. And so
Right.
You can be a gentle, loving reminder and help. Ultimately, it's each one of us that has to make our own choices. But you just give people every bit of evidence and everything you got because you love them. You love them.
Yes, you do. Yeah, I do. And I just want to, we just have a minute left. I just want to share a quick story with you that is kind of interesting. I had your book on my desk the other day, and a coworker of mine walked into my office. She had been in the hospital for a couple of days. She was sedated. She woke up out of the sedation, and the doctor was there by her bedside with a copy of your book, We Don't Die. She came into my office, and she saw your book on my desk. She goes, this is too weird. She said, the doctor that just took care of me in the hospital was reading this exact book when I woke up out of the sedation.
That is wild.
Isn't it?
That's great.
Yeah. So I wanted to end the show with that
Thank
little
you.
story
Mm-hmm.
because you need to know that there are people out there who are definitely still reading your book and definitely still listening to what you have to say. And I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed the hour. And if you would not mind coming back, I could probably continue to talk to you for another hour about everything else that we didn't even cover.
I would love that, Lloyd. Love that.
And if I ever get to another race, I will come say hello to you.
Absolutely. Well, our paths are bound to cross. And thanks for all the good that you're doing, enlightening and motivating and inspiring.
Thank you. One more time before we go, just give my guests, not my guests, my listeners, I keep saying it, my listeners, your information.
Sure. My book is We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. It's available wherever you buy books and in every form, the Nook, the Kindle, the paperback. And then you can visit me on my website, wedon'tdie.com, and get in touch with me, and that's it. And I'm an open book, no pun intended.
Thank you very much, Sandra. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care.